So we're going to get going here. This is ADTA Live. This is the series of Zoom meetings that we put together to try and stay in touch with our membership throughout this lockdown period. So tonight we're featuring Gary Larkin. He's going to be talking about shooting in low light or no light. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, so I'm going to, well, let me tell you how we're going to do this. First of all, we're going to put him on. He's going to give his presentation. And then we're going to go into a question and answer period. And then I'll take over at that point. And then I will explain to you then, there's a way you can signal that you want to talk, and then we'll put you on with Gary. So we'll pick all that up later. So without further ado, let me make sure I'm running my recording. I'm going to turn you over to Gary Larkin, and I'm going to put Gary on full screen. So why don't you take it away, Gary?
Okay. My name is Gary Larkin, as Ed said. I'm one of the instructors here at Armed Defense Training Association. This is going to be fairly informal. I've got some stuff here on my desk that we'll be going over. I wanted to throw out a few interesting statistics regarding low light or low light situations. 80% of the information our brain receives and we make decisions upon are based on sight, for better or for worse. And actually, a lot of people in self-defense try to help condition ourselves to not rely on sight so much, but listen on hearing and different things like that, because we do, as human beings, tend to rely on sight more than we ought to, especially when it comes to hearing and that kind of stuff. But anyways, low light or no light becomes an issue because that impairs our sight. So that's one statistic. Another statistic is that it's not really a statistic, it's a fact that 50% of the calendar year is dark when you average it all out. So, and actually, because crime tends to be more successful at night, 65 to 70% of self-defense events happen in either low light or no light scenarios. And I would say that because of tactical challenges to train, low light self-defense is one of the most undertrained topics in our firearm community, in light of that's harder to turn off the bay lights and that sort of thing to train. But we should all try to find a way to do it because it's very important. So we have a few objectives tonight, and I'm going to touch on these real quick. We're going to discuss the importance of the flashlight as part of your EDC, your everyday carry, and as far as home defense equipment, having a flashlight close by. We're going to discuss pros and cons to turning on your household lights inside your house when you hear a bump in the night. There's some cases where you may not want to do that, and we'll talk about that. We're going to discuss the pros and cons to a weapon-mounted light, like you see here, versus a handheld flashlight, which you all know what that is. We'll discuss the pros and cons. There's good things and bad things for each scenario. Discuss light-activated options on weapon-mounted lights and handheld lights. There's different ways that we turn lights on and off on both. And we're going to talk about different ways to hold a flashlight while holding a firearm and doing magazine changes. So, and discussing like emergency mag change during a low light scenario. Before we go any further though, we always talk about, with anything that we do, whether it's a workshop or a live fire event, we talk about the 4 universal safety rules for firearms. And normally we would ask you all to help us name these, but since we're in this configuration, I'm going to go ahead and just state them. One is to treat every firearm as if it's loaded. Even if you know it's not, we treat it as if it's always loaded. We keep your finger off the trigger unless ready to fire or on target. That's number 2. Number 3 is do not point your firearm at anything you are not willing to destroy. And number 4 is know your target and what's beyond it. It's easy to focus on the target, but we always got to be mindful of what's beyond the target, of people or something else that we don't want to destroy if it goes through or we miss our target. So those are the 4 universal training rules. We'll always go over those on every event that we do. They're very important. So let's talk about the flashlight. I don't go anywhere without my flashlight, even during the day. I also work construction. I'm in commissioning. I'm in different things, so I do use it as far as my job. I'm often in places in industrial scenarios, but yeah, I don't go anywhere. Usually, I have a little pouch here for my stream light. And by the way, all the equipment that I'm talking about tonight, I did email to Ed. He's got a list. I don't know if Ed, if you're able to put that list on the chat, or we can email it out later. But that'll have all the model numbers and of stuff of flashlights and the firearms that I'm using, and including the holsters.
Gary, that went out with the invitations and the notices and stuff.
Oh, great, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is always on my belt, no matter where I go. There's a bigger version. This is the one I keep near my nightstand. It's a little bit larger, but I no matter where I go, I have that considered part of my everyday carry, along with my firearm and other things like a knife, so on. Not only can a flashlight, if the power goes out or your car breaks down or wherever you are, that a flashlight is handy. It's also can be used as an improvised weapon, and we go over different alternative weapons besides firearms. If one thing we talk about is that if all we do is train on firearms, then and our training's only focused on that, then it's like a hammer. Only knowing how to use a hammer for a tool, everything starts looking like a nail. That hammer is the only way to solve that problem, and so we want to understand an overall approach to self-defense as not just having a firearm. We talk about layers of safety with pepper spray, and be able to use keys in your fist with your fingers to be able to do things. So I'm not going to spend more time on that, but I just want to reiterate that layers of safety, along with situational awareness and de-escalation, avoidance. If you hear a bump in the night, it doesn't mean you have to go seek it out, right? It might be the best thing to do is you hear a bump in the night is to stay put, call 911, and lock your door and barricade yourself there with a firearm or whatever tools you have. So so going out with a gun and a flashlight, looking for something isn't necessarily the best tactic. Now, if you have kids in the house, like I do, I'm going to go see what it is because I have kids in the house. And but it depends on the context, and we'll talk more about that. A light can also be used as a weapon. We talked about, we can talk about that. If you guys see, you see how that's crowned? This is a J5 tactical light. This is my very first tactical flashlight that it was $20, and I used it for a while, and there's reasons why I got rid of it, or not get rid of it, but use something different now. But you see how that has got sharp, we call it DNA collectors. If you hold the flashlight like this and you hit somebody across the cheek, it's gonna just take out a big swath of skin, of flesh, right there. And these have the same thing. You see how they're sort of castled. Let's see. You see how they're castled. This is not as aggressive as this one, but so a flashlight can also be used as an improvised weapon, and we'll do something like that later. We talk about Kubotans and pepper spray and other that. But for now, I just wanted to say that a flashlight can be used as a weapon. Last time we did this, I had a 5D cell mag light back in the 90s when mag lights are really popular, and it's basically you can also you can use it as a billy club as well. I usually keep that in my truck for that. Yeah, I would just for a flashlight. I can't recommend flashlights for being part of your emergency, besides your everyday carry, but your emergency preparedness kit. I have flashlights on my vehicles, and I have them on me, and I have them in my house, on my nightstand. Power goes out in the middle of the night, not fumbling for it, right where your flashlight is. So now let's talk about flashlights in your home. Say you hear a bump in the night. It could be your dog drinking water out of his dog bowl, or it could be a kid getting up for a glass of water, or it could be a burglar. You don't know, right? One thing is though, is that you know your house better than any would-be criminal that might be in your house. So you know your floor plan, you know where your kids may have put out Legos as a landmine or whatever. But you know, you have a light switch and it might not be the best thing to turn it on, especially if you have a flashlight and you're going around your house, and we'll talk about this later. But if it's dark and you have the lights off and you see somebody and you shine the lights in their eyes and it's dark out, what's that going to do to their vision? First of all, they're going to be seeing spots because their eyes were adjusted to the dark. They're trying to figure out your house plan. I will say that a lot of house plans are very similar. So it may not be as big an advantage to a criminal as you might think. Usually there's a living room and a hallway with a bathroom and bedrooms. But nonetheless, you still know it better. But when you shine a flashlight in someone's eyes, as I just did the camera, it blinds them, and then they'll see dots, and then you shine it as long as you need to, and then you get off the X, meaning where you're standing, and you slide over with the light off now, so they don't see which way you went while they're seeing dots. So a flashlight's very effective in a dark room to take away a person's night vision that may be trying to cause your family harm. Now, if it was just your son getting a glass of water, so he sees dots for a few seconds, and no harm done, and you know it was. So now that's a decision you're going to have to make yourself, though, as far as the light switch. If you don't have a flashlight, and that's the thing too, if you're ever pointing your firearm at something, you need to know what it is, because the first rule, or the third rule is don't point your firearm at anything you're not willing to destroy. And that's when this man will talk about the weapon mounted light in a moment, is that if you think you have to point your firearm at something, you don't know what it is, you better turn the light on if you don't have a flashlight in your hand, right? Because you never point your firearm at anything that you're not willing to destroy. And that's how accidents happen. So we're going to talk about weapon-mounted lights, and this is a FNS 9C pistol, and this is called the 1913 rail. It's a military specification for how weapon-mounted lights are mounted to pistols. Same with the Springfield. This is a weapon-mounted light on the 1913 rail. And there's the pros and cons is, again, what I said, is if you have a weapon-mounted light and I don't know what's out there, I don't want to lift my firearm up, point at something, then illuminate the light, but now I'm muzzling whatever I was trying to shine my light at. So that's a disadvantage as opposed to a handheld. I'll show you the Harry's method later, but we sort of take our flashlight, and I'm going to point on the wall here so you can see. And I'm not muzzling myself. I got it in between my legs here. You can see that I've got my flashlight right here, and as I come up, I keep the flashlight level, but I bring the firearm up. So when I can shine my flashlight straight out, but I can come up if I need to. But it's a way to point the flashlight without having to point the firearm until you identify what you're looking at when the flashlight illuminates. So that's a disadvantage of a weapon-mounted light. However, inside a house, or say my hallway, there's what's called spill lighting. So if you have a bright enough, and I would recommend at least 300 lumens of brightness for a weapon-mounted light, because what you want is, even though I'm at a low ready position and I turn on my light, there's enough light reflected off the walls that I can still see what I need to see in front of me without pointing the gun. But you got to have a powerful enough weapon-mounted light to do that, to make that work. Now, where that does not work is outdoors. And I've had this before, where I had a raccoon trying to get into my chicken coop. And I had my little LC9S, and I had a handheld even, so I could, that we'll talk about in a minute. And I came up, and the problem was I could see the raccoon, but there wasn't any lighting reflecting like walls inside a house. And I couldn't see the sights on my pistol. So that's another thing we'll talk about with night sights that can help us in outdoor low light situations. So again, disadvantage is that we don't want to point the firearm at anything that we're not willing to destroy, and if we have to point the light on the gun to do that, that's not good. But we can use spill lighting to reflect off, and if it's a bright enough light, you can still point the firearm down in a safe direction and not point it at the person. Now, what's nice about a weapon-mounted light is that if I have to do a mag change, so say I put this magazine in here, and there we go. If I put this magazine in here, I'm indexing, and I've got a weapon-mounted light, I need to do a mag change. It's simple. I take it out, grab another magazine, put it back in, just like normal, like daytime. So a weapon-mounted light gives you simplicity of firearm manipulation, whereas a handheld, if I've got a handheld here, and I drop the magazine out because I'm using the flashlight, drop it out. I've got two things in my hand now. Now I've got to deal with having an extra thing in my hand, and I know I'm making it look easy, but I practiced a lot doing this. So, an advantage of the weapon-mounted light, it simplifies most things that you do with a firearm like you would in the daytime. It's the same as nighttime. I will say that if you have a weapon-mounted light, it takes even more training, because things like how do you manipulate it and then shoot it. My natural tendency when I'm training is to use my index finger, because my finger's already here. And I'm left-handed, by the way. So I want my fingers already here. It'd be easy just to reach down and touch my light, right? But you have to train with the weapon-mounted light, which we're going to be doing more of at ADTA. And that's, you got to use your support index finger on your support hand. So here's my index, this is my trigger finger. I'm going to use my support hand index finger to manipulate that light on and off. And there's two ways. You can lock it on or do momentary, depending which way you flip it. This one also has a laser. This is a Streamlight TL4. You guys can see that laser in the bottom there. This one just has the light and not the laser. The laser has pros and cons to it as well. It tends to bounce around a lot, but at close quarters, you don't even have to worry about how the calibration of the laser that much. Under 7 yards, if the red dot is in the person's chest, if it's an inch or two off, it's not going to be a huge deal. Okay, so we talked about grip, fingering on a weapon-mounted light. Again, you got to train with that, and we are allowed at where we practice at West Coast Armory and in a federal way to shut off the bay lights. And so we'll actually do that. We'll actually go in there, we'll turn off the bay lights. There might be a little bit of a slight fluorescent lights from the hallway that come in, but we actually train with flashlights in a dark bay. Very important. Talked about spill lighting, night sights. Okay, so a lot of times when I go camping, I'll bring this pistol, and this has night sights. And Ed, if you could get ready, I think you're already getting ready to pull that up, but these night sights actually have, they're not even glow in the dark, because glow in the dark wears off like 10 minutes, right? They charge with photons, or not photons, but with photons, and then they'll stay lit. You can see the dots on the sights for 10-15 minutes, and then it slowly wears off. These sights are from Tritium and Everglow and some other ones too. They actually have a radioactive isotope where the dot is, and they actually create their own light. And they will do that for 6 or 8 years. So night sights, here's the thing about night sights. It doesn't mean you don't carry a flashlight. It doesn't mean that you don't have a weapon-mounted light, because if it's so dark you need night sights to aim, then it probably means you don't know what you're shooting at positively, right? So night sights is a good supplement that does not replace the need for a flashlight or weapon mounted light. What it does do is it, like in the situation where the raccoon was trying to get my chickens and I couldn't have any spill lighting from my weapon mounted light, I can see these glow in the dark. I can see my sights. I won't have that problem. But what I actually practically use it for even more is when I'm camping and my firearm is in my tent and it's pitch dark outside because I'm up in the mountains. I can tell the orientation of my pistol no matter what. And if you could pull that up now, and I'll show you. I was actually camping 2 weekends ago up by Lake Wenatchee on an unmaintained camp area. And if you guys can see this, looks like he's trying to share a screen.
Is it working?
I don't see the dots though. You guys see 3 green dots?
I see them.
It says Ed has started screen sharing, but I don't think it's finished yet.
Okay, hang on. Well, I'm seeing it on my end.
Okay.
Let's see.
Maybe people could nod if they see
We cannot
the
see
3
them.
dots.
Say again?
We can't see them here.
No.
So maybe try the next picture. It worked earlier.
Okay, let's try this again. It
So-
worked this afternoon.
Yeah. So what it is I wanted to actually show you 3 different angles of my pistol in my tent, and you can see what I was seeing. And what it does is that it tells me where my firearm is, how it's oriented, so I can just reach for it. I know exactly the orientation of my pistols. Is it on its side? Is it up? Is it laying on the other side? And it's so helpful. It's also very helpful on your nightstand or wherever you have it to be able to see the immediate orientation of your pistol, and you be able to just reach for it in the dark. I personally like sleeping when it's really dark. That's actually better for you, I guess, the melomins, or whatever they call it, whatever the sleep hormone is better if it's darker. And I would say, again, you know your room better than somebody else. So if your room's dark, that's probably good. Okay, let's see, just trying to share. Oh, there they are. Can we see that? Okay, actually, that's perfect. Can everybody see those 3 different pictures?
Yes.
Okay, so if you can still see me, the first one is like, let's see, it's going to be like this. I'm holding it. I'm actually holding it up in the air. And I'm holding on the side. You see the 2 in the back and the 1 up front. The second one, I'm holding it like this. And again, you can see 2. You can see 2 the sights, and then the 1 in front. Then the third one is actually how I would normally have it.
We can't see you at the same time.
But that's okay. The third one, you can see the 2 dots are sort of up and down in the back, and then you see 1 in the front. That's because it's laying on its right side. And so, anyways, I don't want to dwell too much on it. Thanks, Ed, for sharing that. My point is that in pitch dark, that is so bright. It is so bright, and I can't. Any pistol I buy now, especially this is my 10 millimeter I use when I'm out in the bear. It's got a fiber optic, but it still needs some light for it to be effective. At some point, I'm going to change these out to night sights. Okay, and enough on night sights. The thing is, though, it doesn't replace the need for a flashlight, because if you need night sights to aim, then that means you need a flashlight. It's dark enough to need a flashlight to identify what your potential target is. Okay. One thing we talk about mag changes is, can you do it in the dark? Let's say I've got my handheld, and we talk about a workspace, and I'll just refresh. I'll just go over that really quick here. A workspace is about a 45 to 30 degree cone starting right here, a cone around you, and we call that the workspace. So your firearm should never be more pointed outward to the sides or up or down than about this sort of cone arc, if you can see that. And so that's what we define as our workspace. So if I have to do a mag change, you know, and it's dark out, and I've got my flashlight, but now I've got to turn it off because now I've ran out. My slide's locked back. Okay, so it'd be a situation where I'm gonna. So I just ran out. I was in a gunfight. I had my flashlight. I'm doing it right, and my mag becomes empty, and then so my slide locks back, I think, but it's dark out. I got some spill light, but not a lot. To do a mag change, I'm going to have to take my flashlight hand and do the mag change. Have I trained enough that this is muscle memory where I can just do this without looking and get back in the fight? So another plug for training and making sure that we have enough muscle memory that we can do some of these evolutions when there's no light. And we'll do that when we go to the live fire event and we're doing low light. We will absolutely turn off the lights, and we'll make people do mag changes with a flashlight in their hand. And because if you've never done it, the time to figure that out is not when your life is dependent on it. And how we're doing for time? I guess we're almost out of time here. So cruising on down. Let's take it. So holsters. They do make a lot of holsters now. You could tell I've got this. Let's see. I have this holster here. And this is actually an inside the waistband. So the belt would go through here. Again, this is left-handed. The belt would go through here, go out the outside, going through here. Now, you can see how thick that is. If my belt has to come around here, and it's going to be pulling on this way out here, that hopefully that comes out. That's got to come way out here from my belt. What I found with inside the waistband holsters is that it does tend to spread the clips out. And after a while, and that's why I don't use this one this much, if I'm concealed carrying, I have my everyday carry flashlight on me. I don't normally carry with a weapon mounted light. That's just for my nightstand, my home defense. But if it works for you and you find a holster and you don't have that issue and you're okay with the extra bulk, again, we can see how thick this is compared to what would be a normal inside the waistband holster. It's a lot thicker and bulkier. So, and just the fact that when you're out and about at night, out away from your home, there's a lot of chances for you needing a handheld flashlight anyway. So you can't get your key, trying to figure out where your keys are, or in a bag. You're not gonna whip out your pistol because your weapon mounted light's now your light source, and go looking through your bag, muzzling everything in your hand, trying to find your keys. So if you're out and about, you probably have a need for a handheld flashlight anyways. So why have a weapon mounted flashlight in addition to that, as well? So I find that with concealed carry, having a inside the waistband holster that's sleek, comfortable to wear, and a handheld flashlight is the way to go. For me, again, this is just personal opinion. And for home defense, I have a weapon mounted light. I've trained on using spill lighting to not point my muzzle. And that's sort of the sweet spot for me. But again, we're just trying to present pros and cons and let you guys decide what works best for you. So I'm going to have about 5 more minutes here. And I want to go over handheld pros and cons. We've already talked about how the handheld makes it a little more difficult to manipulate the pistol because now you've got something else in your hand to do manipulations with the firearm. If you have a malfunction, class 1, 2, or 3 type malfunction where you get a malfunction, you gotta see if it's high brass or low brass, you go tap, rack, bang, you're back into it. We'll cover more on like malfunctions at a different time. But now you're doing that with a flashlight in your hand as well. If you've got a double feed and you've got a stripped magazine, again, you have to train using a flashlight in your hands while you're doing these pistol manipulations. So that's a disadvantage of a handheld. Now, there's some different styles. There's Ray Chapman, who won the world's first pistol championship in 1975. It's called the Chapman hold. And this is back when flashlights had, I have this one just because I only have a few that have the button up here. But back when flashlights had the button, you turn it on and off up here, or it slid forward and back. The Chapman hold is it's underhand, and you'd hold it sort of, instead of your support hand being around like this, you'd have a flashlight sort of here, and you sort of just push the flashlight against the firearm here with your hands, and then you would turn your flashlight on and off like that. Now the problem is if I'm holding it low ready, I know I'm jacking my wrist down, and it's not real comfortable to go low ready and then back up and down. So this is a little cumbersome, but it is the Chapman hold. If you have that kind of flashlight, I don't recommend. One thing I do recommend is the flashlights, for what they call a tactical flashlight, is that it has a momentary button, so you can turn it on and off quickly without fully depressing it. So it's just momentary on. Now I can fully press it and it locks on, but it has a momentary switch where you press it just a little bit, and it just comes on for the time that you have it depressed. The reason why that's important is, again, if you're in the house and you're going around and you have the lights down because you know your house better than a potential criminal, and you want to shine a room up, okay, see what's there, then turn it off immediately, and then get off the X, meaning step aside, change your location. You can't do that by clicking on and clicking off. You can't do that very fast, but you can do that very easily with a momentary function. So one of the biggest, besides being at least 300 lumens, I would recommend, is to have a momentary button on the back. The Chapman, the older flashlights, don't really have that. It's just on or off, so that's a disadvantage. Now, once these became more popular, then Masada Ahoob, I don't know, I'm probably butchering his name, I should know his name better, but he's a real famous firearm instructor. He came up with a Ahoob hold, and instead of doing the underarm like you would for a switch, you go over like this, and now you have your thumb available to momentary. So now you're going like this, and this is more conducive to holding it low ready and then coming up. But it's hard to me. It doesn't. There's a better hold, but that's another hold that you do. Another one is called a Rogers hold, or we also call it a syringe hold, and that's the one where you hold the firearm in your index finger and your middle finger, and you use your thumb, and you're still here, but you're using your thumb, and you can go like this, and then you sort of just pivot when you come up. Again, you're not doing too much to help hold the firearm. Then there's the FBI hold, and the FBI is, you got your firearm here, you're shooting one-handed like this, and you hold the firearm, or you hold the flashlight up by between your ear and your shoulder, and you can hold it like that. The other one is called a neck index, where you put your index finger by your neck, and you hold like this. An obvious disadvantage is now you're shining the light where your head is, so now it's an easy target, right? So the problem with the FBI hold too, or the neck index, now you're shooting one-handed and you have less control over your firearm. The Harry's method is the last one we'll talk about, and that's the one that I prefer. But again, it's just to open you up to different techniques, and you figure out which works best for you. I'm going to go this way since I'm left-handed, so you can see the firearm. Again, we're going to the bookcase here. Oops. And so I'm going to shine my flashlight, and as I come up, my wrist pivots, and this way the indentation in my wrist right here interlocks with my other wrist, and actually does help support my firearm. And I think that one thing that Wu, who's on the call, mentioned also, that sometimes he'll curl his wrist up to get even more of an interlock, and you can still do the same thing there. So we talk about that. So let's it's 7:33. Let's open up to questions. And again, very informal. If you have a question, Ed will just raise your hand, and Ed will call on you, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so let me explain to you how this works. When you move your mouse around on your screen, you will see a green button. Well, you see, no, just a button down on the bottom that says participants. You're going to click on that. And then over on the right-hand side of your screen is a list of everybody who is on the call. And down in the very lower right-hand corner, there's a little button with 3 dots on it. And if you press that button and press raise your hand, as you can see up there, we have 2 people that have their hands up. Okay, so John Shaw, I'm going to turn on your mic and go ahead and
Thank
ask
you.
a question.
Thank you, Gary. Good presentation. When you're training in the Bay Areas, are you training with these different methods, or is it up to the individual to pick the best one for them?
So usually we'll have them try some of them at first, and then in the second round of practice, then we have them select the one that they want to focus on more. That way they're exposed to all of the different methods of handheld, but then later they can hone in on the one that they particularly like. We'll say that weapon mounted lights, we haven't done, I think we've done some of the advanced training, but we want to incorporate weapon mounted lights as well. The challenge there is that you have to have people who already have a weapon mounted light and have holsters that'll accommodate the weapon mounted light. So it takes some extra equipment, and we'll probably offer those on a, far enough advance that people have time to get those kinds of holsters. That usually take a little longer because they're not off the shelf. They usually have to custom make to match a pistol with a weapon mounted light. Usually it'll be a Streamlight or Surefire, some of the more common weapon mounted lights. Tony, one thing we didn't have at this time is you guys, I showed you that the weapon mounted light have, the switches are right here. But Tony has, I think a laser handgun. Tony, I don't know if you have that handy or not. But there's also, whether on an AR-15 or a shotgun, there's a pressure switch usually located somewhere in the grip area. It's a pressure switch that'll turn on the light on their rail of a rifle, or some even pistols will have some sort of a grip switch around the grip that'll turn on their weapon mounted light as well. So that's one thing we didn't cover. I don't have an example of that. But if any of you guys have that, that are the more experienced members, if you don't mind grabbing one of those so we could show them. But okay, any other questions?
Okay, Doug Weaver, you got a question.
Gary, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Excellent. Hey, never worry about whether you're running out of time or not. You have good stuff to teach. Hey, I took the course one time before, and you didn't show those 3 slides. And all the confusion, I got lost on what you were saying in the 3 slides. So
on the 3 slides, it just shows different ways that the 3 dots on my so normally there's the white dots. You can see the white dots on here. Maybe, I don't know if you can see that, but they're actually in the middle is a green isotope, and they're actually glow in the dark night sights that create their own light. And my point was that with your firearm laying down on your nightstand or next to my tent pad in my tent in the middle of the mountains, is in the middle of the night and I hear something, I can see exactly where my pistol is and the orientation that it is. So when I go to grab for it, I'm not fumbling around trying to figure out where it is. I can go right for the grip. I know right where my index finger goes because I can see the sights, so I can see how it's laying and where the front of the pistol is, where the rear is, and where they are to each other. Because it looks different if it's like this, because now the sights will look different like this versus this.
thanks, Gary.
Okay, sorry, I was probably a long-winded answer, but that was the gist of that.
Okay, what else we got for questions? Wu, you have anything you want to add? Okay, Wu, let's see if I can get you. There you go.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things Gary had mentioned something about the Rogers thing. I just want to show you this flashlight.
Oh, the string.
This has that little grommet on here, and that exactly is what that's for. And I can hit it with my finger, my
Hey,
thumb,
Well, we
or I,
got full screen now.
or I can use the pad of my hand here. So you can see using that. So when I'm actually got my gun in my hand, I don't need to bring my thumb down, but right from here, I can hit it with this. So if you have this is the Surefire method. Surefire and Rogers basically are the same, except Surefire added this grommet.
Cool. And then would you carry, is that for more home defense, or would you carry that on your person?
Oh, I can carry that on my person as well, but it's just a little bit large.
Bulky, yeah.
But I carry on my person this. Okay.
Yeah.
The same thing as the large ones. Especially at nighttime when you're approaching your car or whatever, you just need to take this, shine it in the back of the car to see if there's anybody there under the car, to see if anybody's hiding underneath. So this is just something cheap, $25 or so, and it's not anything as big as this. So
I would say that $25 actually, I mean, there's a lot of flashlights that are more than that, $100 and $200 for some flashlights, but this is a $6 ever ready flashlight. And to me, there's a big difference between this flashlight and $25 that Woo has. The fact of having that tactical momentary switch, that $25 flashlight to me is way worth more than just some cheap flashlight. I've got literally boxes of old cheap flashlights that I found didn't work for me, and I've wasted a lot of money on cheap flashlights. So buying a $25 flashlight, or this is $60. I think this was around $60. So you can buy these Streamlights are good now. Surefires will be a little bit more expensive, but they're definitely good quality. Pelican is another brand of flashlights that are great quality. One thing I'll talk about briefly is the strobe function. So a lot of these have programmable. You can change what order you press the button. So this is high, strobe, or low power. There's the three different things that I can do with this. But the strobe, what I'm finding with most people is that it's more gimmicky. If I've got to figure out which button to do the strobe, it's a little distracting to try to figure out how to do that. If I blind somebody, turn it on and off, I ruin their night vision, get off the X. That's much better to me than just sitting there strobing the guy and trying to dink around with the strobe function. I'm totally open to comments to you guys on what you think of the strobe function, but I find most farm people don't use that a whole lot.
no, we don't. It's distracting, and it's very similar to the laser because it bounces around, and if you don't hold it properly, it also illuminates other areas because it's not consistent. Sometimes if you have an issue with your eyes and such, it might affect you more than the aggressor. So I don't recommend it.
Okay, we have any more questions? I have Young, and I'm sorry, I don't know your first name, but I'm going to put you on. There you go.
Okay, I had a question about if you have really small hands, what would be the best technique for using a flashlight and manipulating a magazine change?
Well, if you have small hands and so you want to maximize support for your pistol, I would say probably the Harry's method. It does give you a little more engagement with your support hand. I would say the biggest thing though is to try all of them and find the one that works best for you. But I would have to imagine that the Harry's method would probably give you most support for the firearm when you're actually shooting it, is the Harry's method. Just because you're able to unlock your wrists more for more support. I guess I'm saying if your hands are smaller, then there's a good chance you may then you may have a smaller firearm. It still could be a 9mm, right, or whatever caliber. But the smaller the firearm, the more recoil it's going to have. Excuse me. The more recoil it's going to have if it's a smaller firearm, less weight to handle that recoil. The Harriers probably gives you the best support there. Or do the weapon-mounted light, but again, subcompacts often don't have that 1913 rail that we talk about for weapon-mounted lights. Does that help at all?
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, Tony, you have a question. Why don't you go ahead?
Well, I'm unmuted, and can you see me?
Yep.
Okay. Just a supplement to Wu's thing on the Surefire.
Yeah.
With this lanyard set at the right length, see, I can grab it and put it in any of the normal positions for use, which saves if I'm doing a mag change or something, so that I can walk around the house or the dark places and have that always at the ready. So,
Yeah, the lanyard's a good method. So I guess as well for small hands, if you have a hard time manipulating the pistol with the mag change, you actually can drop the flashlight because it's on the lanyard on your wrist, and then you can just sort of flip it back up, and catch it again once you're done with your mag change. I would say though that in the moment, if you're having to draw quickly and get the flashlight out quickly, you may not have time to put the lanyard on, but when you get a pause, you can then put the lanyard,
right.
put the lanyard on. Yeah.
You have any more thoughts on that, Tony?
No.
Okay, Wu, you're up.
Yeah, just to follow on with what Gary was talking, you're talking about different ways of you have small hands, etc. There are lots of options. I think Tony brought up the fact that you have a lanyard. You can just drop it, and then you can do your mag changes. There's also this with a finger ring. You just flip it over and do your mag changes. Come back, flip it back over, and then now you got your light again. So there's another option there that's available to you. The other thing it would be, if you're using this hand motion here, just put it on the armpit. Okay, now you got two hands free. Or pocket it if you need to. But the thing here is that there are options, and like Gary says, you're going to try it out as far as what you're going to use it for and how you're going to use it. So come to the training, because the first thing you're going to do is at the dry fire practice, we'll take you guys through all the FBI holes, the neck index holes, the Harris and all that. Give you a try without a live fire event, and then from there, once you get comfortable with that, you got a chance to try it at home even. And then once you go to the live fire, you have a better idea of how you're using it and what you're going to be using it. Okay?
Yeah, and to shoot with us at our live fire events, you have to be if they have the safe shooter certification. It's a very basics, and then the next step is defensive handgun certification. And one of the qualifications or steps you have to perform is shooting in low light. So that's what we're talking about tonight. It does help qualify you for one of the handgun certifications that we have.
Okay, we have any more questions? I think we wrung them all out of them, Gary, so thank you very much. Let's everybody wave goodbye to Gary. We're going to go ahead and end the meeting. Thank you very much, and hope to see you again this time next week for our next meeting, which is going to be how to select your first handgun. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thanks.